Hey folks, this is Mike from KEI Fabrication. This is my LS swapped Mazda B2200. If you're new to my channel, go back and check out some of the modifications we've done to this to make it a road racer, a circle track racer, and a drag racer. It's in the process of undergoing some more transformations. You'll see updates on that soon. I've been noticing a fuel pump problem with my truck. It's getting lazy, and yesterday I went to clean out my work so I could have everything at home I need to do my job at home, and it actually quit running going down the highway, so I had to stop and encourage it to start pumping again with this. And this morning when I went to take off, of course it's a rainy, miserable, nasty morning, I had to do the same thing, crawl under the truck and encourage it to work. So it's up and running. Today's mission is to put the a fuel pump in it. Hey folks, I lost another fuel pump on this thing, and this is coronavirus day 6 lockdown, so I'm going to use the opportunity to not only fix the pump but change some things. Many of you saw, or hopefully have seen, a video. If not, I'll leave a link in the description. This is the eBay filter that I did a video on to try and explain some of the faults I found in it. Well, I'm going to take this apart today because I've got to take the fuel system apart. I'm going to disassemble it and see what the fuel filter has done for me, and see if the modifications I did worked or created an issue that I wasn't aware of. One thing I wanted to point out is you can see that my fuel line, as it comes out of the tank, it stays below the tank level through the filter, and then it actually rises up about 4 inches to the pump. When I first put this truck together, I just kind of randomly positioned the pump, and I put the bracket well up on the frame. I'm going to use this opportunity to actually cut that bracket off the frame while the pump is out and move it down below, so I get a more uniform flow through from the tank to the pump, because it is kind of gravity feed except for whatever kind of head pressure is from the fuel level in the tank. So anyway, I'll try to document what I've done here and let you know what I've found. This is the Bosch 044 pump. It's been on the truck for just about a year, and it just slowly over time started complaining a little bit in terms of the noise that it was making, and then finally it just quit turning on initially, and then after it ran for 15 minutes or so, it would just stop. And on my way home from work a few days ago, I got about halfway down the highway, halfway home, and it just shut off. I pulled over on the side of the highway. As you saw another segment of this video, that I used a small hammer to tap on it to get it going, and it got me the rest of the way home. So the pump was not hot. I put my hand on it when I originally had to pull over because the fuel pump shut off. I don't know if it's the brushes or if it's a brushless motor, if the bearings in the motor are going or whatever, but anyway, it's got a 55 psi regulator on it, so it's not deadheaded or anything like that. I'm assuming that I'm using the pump in its proper range of use, but I've not had a whole lot of luck with them. I have an older, less expensive eBay pump that I'm going to put on just as a diagnostic tool, and also I'm going to do a little endurance test on that eBay pump just to see how long it lasts. So anyway, let me get to taking this thing apart. folks, let's first take a look at this eBay fuel filter and take a look inside, see if it's been doing anything at all. Hopefully the aluminum body here didn't seize up. The body came undone on this end, so let's see what goes on. So here's the little spring that I put in, if you want to see that. It looks like it survived the E10 fuel out here in the Northeast. The filter seemed to have stayed in position, so let's see what kind of shape the filter is in. So the good news is the downstream side of this thing looks pretty clean. I'll give it a clean out with brake parts cleaner. And the pleats in the stainless filter actually look pretty good. So one of the things that I was concerned about was, will this thing just plain old deteriorate and fall apart? And it's been almost a year and the thing has survived pretty well. So I guess on that note, other than the modifications that I've made, so far I'd have to say I'm pretty happy with it. So there's a tiny bit of residual, just like powder in here. I don't know if you can see it clean up or not, but it went from, so that gray on the tissue here or the paper towel is just a tiny bit of gray. I'm not sure what that's from, but anyway, I think it's safe to flush this filter out, put it back together. The O-rings seem to be in good shape. I think we can move on and just put this right back in. You can see that the ports that I increased the size of are still shiny aluminum. So again, I'm running E10 in this thing. The fact that I drive it every day is probably helping, but it's still shiny aluminum. So that takes some of the worry out of my head. And the same is true with this end. The modifications that I made has still been, is still shiny aluminum. So alright, let's move on to the next step, which is, this is the fuel pump that just came out of it. So I'm going to steal the fittings out of this and transfer them over to the other pump. So this pump I've already had in the truck. You've seen me do a report on this. There was nothing wrong with this pump except it just suddenly died and blew the fuse, and the reason is I did not have a filter in line, and you'll see that on the same video, I believe, that talks about 2 breakdowns and 2 weeks. I'll put that in the link in the description below. And what happened is a piece of MIG wire that was a leftover from when I welded the fittings in the tank made it into the fuel pump, went through the screen, and basically bound the pump up. As soon as I got rid of that wire, I hooked it up to 12 volts and the pump ran fine. So I'm hoping this has plenty of life left in it. I'm also interested in putting this back in the truck. There's the name of it, come right off of eBay. I think it was 19 bucks, shipping included. I'm just kind of interested to see how well this performs in terms of longevity. It is identical in terms of size and fit, and it is kind of heavy, so I'm thinking that the motor in there is actually pretty good. It's got probably the same amount of magnets in it as the Bosch pump had. The only thing I did notice is that the terminals are slightly smaller than the Bosch pump. I don't know if you can see the difference in size. So they're tiny on the black pump as opposed to the Bosch pump. So anyway, that's going to be the next step, is to just transfer the fittings over that pump. And then I put some friction tape on the pump so it wasn't metal on metal to my pump bracket, and I just used some stainless hose clamps to put it in place. And my theory was that it would reduce any kind of transmission or noise into the vehicle. So I'll do the same. You can see this has some of the residual glue on it from the friction tape. I'll reapply it to that, put it back in. So once I get the fittings changed over and some of the fuel that I spilled, I got to make sure it's all evaporated. I'm going to modify the bracket on the truck, and then I'll put this pump back in. So I've got the fittings out of the pump here, and I'm not seeing any indication of debris in the pump. And again, it didn't stop running like suddenly and super high amps in the fuse. It just, the motor got slower and slower and slower and turned into just like a low-pitched groan, and then eventually it quit altogether. So again, I'm not seeing any debris. I think just the motor itself failed. That's my second Bosch pump that has failed on me. So we'll keep trying stuff till we find something that works. So one of the things I did notice, this is the Bosch pump, and if you look at the diameter of one versus the other, one is significantly smaller. So this is the Bosch pump, and this is the eBay pump, and you can also see that the threads are slightly different. So I have to use the eBay pump one for the eBay pump because the threads bottom out in the pump. So I'm going to send a drill through this hole to open it up to that, and I'll put a nice lead-in chamfer on that, so the fuel flow will be as good as it can be, and then we'll put the pump back together. So that's something that I did not notice when I originally bought the eBay pump to replace the first Bosch pump that failed. I don't know if you can see that, but there's definitely some metal chunks coming out of there. Alright, so I was just running a quick test on the pump that I just took out, the Bosch 044 pump. And it started up and ran on the first try, and then when I went to start it again, it was dead, and then I gave it a little tap and it started up again. So there's something definitely going on inside this thing that stops it from running. Right now it's running properly, but the intermittent aspect of it obviously is a huge problem. So I just hooked up the power and it's not running, so see a little tap and it goes. So there's an issue there. Alright folks, I got the fuel filter back in and I rerouted the fuel line so it goes, used to go through that hole in the frame just above the fuel line. Now it goes under, but it still goes under the gas tank shield or over the top of it, so it's protected. And I dropped the pump bracket down. As you can see, it's slightly below the frame, so I built this little deflector shield in case I have an off-track excursion. It'll ramp onto this shield. you know, it's protecting it from any debris or anything that might be coming off the track. But the thing that I like is let me go over to this side. The fuel line now there's the back of the pump, is kind of the same level all the way back to the fuel filter, and then goes all the way back to the tank. You can just see the loop way back there. So anyway, I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make in keeping the cavitation down to a minimum, but the pump used to be higher in the frame on the other side, and it would come out of the filter and the head pressure would have to force it up into the pump, and then it would pick it up and go. So now everything is at least flush with the bottom of the tank or slightly below it. Then once it's under pressure, you can see the bracket protecting the pump and the little ramp. So anyway, I'm gonna turn it on, check for leaks, see what happens. Maybe. Oop, there she goes. She's starting to prime now. Double check for leaks. Doesn't look like anything in an emergency. I'll put it up in the air and check thoroughly in just a minute. My fuel pressure's at 50 pounds. Looks like the regulator is working, so just because it's a different pump, it doesn't look like I have to adjust the regulator pressure. So the real test is going to be time, and we'll just have to see how it works out. So I'm going to put it up in the air and thoroughly check for leaks, and then hopefully cross this one off the list. So far everything looks good at the filter. Everything looks good at the back of the pump, and everything looks good at the front of the pump. So the pump's nice and quiet. So hopefully this will go down the road and last for a little while. Alright, on to the power steering leak.